Welcome to Basics of MedTerm. Let's look at the most introduction of questions, and that is, what is medical terminology? Well, medical terminology is just the way words are created and broken down to form our terms, right? And medical terminology originated from two languages, which most of English actually originated from, and those are Latin and Greek. Now, what did Latin and Greek do? Well, they formed word parts. And word parts are what you might know as your prefixes, roots, and suffixes. Okay, but what do prefixes, roots, and suffixes do? Well, let's break down each one. Prefixes tell us about the location. So if you say hypo, it could be below something, or it can tell you the time or the number of a disease or a condition. Roots are the middle of a term, or they can be at the start, because you don't always need a prefix. So let's write don't always need. Okay, and then roots are going to tell you the body part. Okay, that's the main point of a root. So if you say gastro, it can mean the stomach. If you say cardi, it can mean the heart. So it's the body part. And suffixes are known as the most important part of a medical term, and they tell you the condition, or if it's a procedure, they tell you the type of procedure, or it could be like a treatment, or they will tell you the disease, right? And you always need a suffix. You don't always need this either. Okay? And then there's one part of a medical term that's not a prefix, root, and suffix that you'll need to know, and it's called a combining vowel. So, a combining vowel is used when you need to connect two root words. Okay, so if you want to connect gastro, which means stomach, gaster is the term, is actually the root only. And then you want to connect enter, which means intestine. You're using the combining vowel of an O right here. So the things to know about a combining vowel are that it's usually O, but it can also be other vowels, and it's used in two main cases. First case would be you want to combine two roots, or it can be used when you need to connect a root plus a suffix, but the suffix starts with a consonant. Okay, so those are the conditions for a combining vowel. Now, let's talk about the ways you can make a medical term. There are 4 ways to make a medical term, so 4 is the magical number. The first way is going to be the most probably recognized one, and you can say prefix, and you can have your root, and then you can have a suffix. And an example of this would be hypoglycemia. Okay, now you have the prefix, you have the root, and you have the suffix. Okay? But there's another way, and that could be the root and a suffix. And an example would be cardiology. Okay, you have cardi, which is the root, and then you have a suffix ology with the combining vowel of the O. And then the next way could be a prefix and a root. Nope, prefix and a suffix, sorry. Prefix and a suffix. Okay, and this could be like hyperemesis. Okay, you have the prefix and you have the suffix. All right, and then the fourth way to make a medical term would be a root suffix. An example of this would be cardiomyopathy. You have the cardi, you have the myo, and the pathy, which is the suffix. All right, so now let's do some word surgery. I'll break down these terms right here because they are right here, but we'll say first term to break down, hypoglycemia. Okay, so first thing to do to break down a medical term is to look at the suffix. And the suffix right here is emia. Okay, so let's put a line through it. The suffix you are going to label, write that it's a suffix, and then define. Emia means blood condition, right? Anemia without blood, it means blood basically. And then the next thing you want to look at is the prefix or the start of the term. It might not always have a prefix, so in parentheses just write start. Oh, not start. Start of the term. And the start of the term here is hypo. And hypo means below or deficient. So you're going to write prefix and write below or low. Okay? And then there's glyce. And glyce means sugar. Okay, it means glucose. So the third thing is to look at the middle or what's left. And this means it's a root, meaning sugar or glucose, right? And the final term now you can combine with this right here to create the final term, which is a blood condition of low blood sugar. Okay, and this is low blood sugar, is hypoglycemia. Let's do one more term. Otorhinolaryngologist. Okay, this is a long term, but we can break it down. So first thing you'll do is look at the suffix. So what do I notice? Well, I see ologist or logist, which means a specialist. So suffix means specialist. And you could have a neurologist, an ophthalmologist. So this just means specialist. And then let's look at the start of the term. This term doesn't have a prefix. Notice that odo is the start. So odo means ear, right? And it's a root meaning ear. The otoscope is what they use to look at your ear. And then the next part we're going to look at is the rhino. Now, rhinoplasty, rhinorrhea, that all means nose, right? So it's a root term meaning nose. And laryngo, well, the larynx is part of your throat, it's voice box. So laryngo means throat. Okay, so it's a root meaning throat. So the entire term combined is a specialist of the ear, nose, and throat, also known as an ENT. Okay, so that is our dive into the introduction to medical terminology.